Forced to work from home by your employer? Laid off or feeling depressed at home? Do you want to make money working from anywhere? We'll show you how to do it from your couch. It's time for another episode of the Work From Home Show. Coming to you from their homes in Austin, Texas and Tampa, Florida, here are your hosts, Adam and Naresh.
Welcome back to another episode of the Work From Home Show. Naresh Vissa with Adam Schrader, and we have a third person with us. His name is Paul Bailo. He was the former global head of digital strategy and innovation at Infosys Digital. Infosys, great company. He's also the author of the best-selling book. It's very relevant right now, and the sales are doing extremely well. But the book is called the Essential Digital Interview Handbook, Lights, Camera, Interview, Tips for Skype, Google Hangout, GoToMeeting, and more. So we're going to have an awesome interview about digital resources that you can use working from home. Paul Bailo is widely recognized by industry thought leaders for his C-level executive skills in digital transformation, analytics, marketing, and business operations. He has earned deep career success in multiple fields, along with an outstanding industry reputation in important executive roles as digital innovator, strategic thinker, change agent, customer champion, industry author, and creative entrepreneur. He's also currently an adjunct professor at both Columbia and NYU. Paul, welcome to the Work From Home Show.
Oh, Naresh, thank you very much. And Adam, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Now that we have you here, there's three of us, which I think officially makes this a party. So.
Yeah.
That's great.
So first question, Paul, tell us a little bit about how our listeners who, by and large, almost 100% of them are working from home, at least right now, how can they effectively participate in this new digital economy and also in digital meetings?
Yeah, so I don't think it's new. I think it's always been there. And I think people now are forced to work from home, and they're realizing what they should have done probably years ago to be set up for success in the digital world. And what I mean by that is really communicating as if you were there with the person. So I consider digital communication really two-dimensional. Phone interviewing, phone communication obviously is one-dimensional. Voice, digital interviewing, digital communication, two, sight and sound. And then obviously physical, being there, touching the person, seeing the person, listening to the person. So I think this idea of digital communication's always been there, but it's always been to the side a little bit. And what people are now realizing is, oh my goodness, this isn't something that's on the side in the broom closet. This is something that we need now. And I should have really thought about this a long time ago. And this idea of digital communication and digital interviewing has really nothing to do about digital. It has to do about that human being and getting that emotional trait through that digital communication line and being, acting, feeling like that person's right next to you, which is a very different way of behaving as opposed to when you're actually in someone's office. So people now are realizing what worked in the real world maybe 3 weeks ago before the virus struck is that they really have to start adjusting to this digital communication. How they look, how they sound, what is their internet connection, how is the lighting, and what they used to use at work in the office, they're realizing does not work in the digital arena. They actually have to start morphing into their digital leadership model in the way they actually communicate.
So let's talk about the environment of your house. Like, do you need to find like a nice, clean place with something kind of unobtrusive in the background, like a flat paint color or something? Or kind of what are the best tips for kind of where to set up your meeting?
Yeah, Adam, that's absolutely a great question. So the first thing you have to realize is get into the right mindset. You are no longer an employee. You are really a Hollywood star or a Broadway actor when you start communicating over the web, over your Zoom or over Skype. You can't just sort of flip open your laptop and say, here I am. You have to have the right mindset, which basically says, I have a meeting. I need to make sure I'm prepared. And preparation doesn't mean just turning the laptop on. It means having the right connectivity, having the right bandwidth, having the right camera, having the right mic, having the right lighting, and having the right background. So, I mean, in my studies, I mean, when I wrote the book, it was all analytic based. I did a lot of research for my PhD. I wrote white papers on this, and I said, no one in their right mind is going to read these white papers. And then I wrote the book, which made more sense. But the logic is that 90% of successful digital communication is about sight. It's very little about what you're saying. It has more to do with the fact of how are you looking. And that means preparing. I mean, I can't tell you how many people I've seen having executive meetings and the person's in the closet and you see person's clothing. Or even when you watch CNN, I can't tell you how many books I've been sending to CNN because now that the virus is here, all their commentary, special guests, are like at home. But they pick the most odd places. Like, I'm going to show off that I'm going to have my interview in the library. All I do when I see that, I'm trying to figure out what books are behind them and what books they're reading. Some people want to show off their offices. They have pictures of them in their office, and behind them, I'm just looking out the window watching the cars move. So finding the right location is critical, but what you really need to do is go buy some seamless paper on Amazon. It's like $10 for huge rolls. And seamless paper is what photographers use when they do photographs of children or dogs or cats, or if you remember in elementary school when they took your picture, that, they had this background. And I'm not talking about having the background like the horses and the cows and on the farm. I'm talking about a blue or gray background with a marble sort of tint to it. That's really what you need, because the only thing that's important during your communications in a digital arena is the triangle of love. And the triangle of love is the top of your head to your left shoulder to your right shoulder. That's all that matters. The rest is really just noise in the photograph or trying to communicate. People need to see your face in order to communicate what you're trying to say. People like listening and seeing people's faces. The rest of it, of that environment, is a complete distraction for people. So you have to really find that room, but it's not only the room, it's actually going out and investing in some seamless photographic paper.
Your answer there made me think of the Seth Meyers late night show. He's done it from 3 different places in his house. They're trying to find the best place for him. And the very first place was like in his hall, and like the stairs were behind him, and it sounded really echoey, and it was terrible. And so you just made me think of that whenever you're talking about it, because it seemed like every day he was on a different place in his house.
The best place actually is, if you could get rid of the echo, is actually in the bathroom if you don't have any seamless paper, and if you have a shower curtain that's really not too flowery or colorful, that actually works pretty well.
Yeah. Interesting.
Or if you could go out and, not that I'm not telling anyone at this time to go out, but if you have what we called in elementary school like tag paper, they get, just those big sheets of like a blue or a light gray. I think it's like $1.99 at Staples. If you could just put that behind you and frame yourself out, that also works very well.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw Dr. Paul, but you talked about CNN and Chris Cuomo. He was diagnosed with the virus, and he's in his basement of his home. And so it's so strange seeing him, because he's one of the most recognizable faces on CNN, and now he's alone in his basement. And he keeps saying, "Oh yeah, my family's upstairs. I'm quarantining down here," and it's dark. And I get the feeling though that they're kind of doing it on purpose. Like, yeah, CNN could easily send a crew out there to set up his basement and make it have the photographic paper and make it optimal, but they're probably probably want that natural.
Well, they're also not going to send somebody into his basement if he's got the virus. You're not going to do that.
Before he went in, or get it clean.
Or leave it at the door. I don't think they realize it. I see this all the time. I can't tell you how. I'm serious. How many books I've sent to CNN? Like every time I'm watching it. Man, I'm a big fan of CNN and MSNBC, but they really need help. It's not the background. I mean, really, it's sort of pathetic. right? There's a system. I mean, everything I'm telling you and everything I put in the book is all data driven. That's been tested and tried, right? It's all data driven. And what we're trying to say is the days are over when you're just going to just start up a conversation on the web. It's all about preparation. My futuristic view of the next house is that you would have sort of your own Zoom, Skype, video room. And you're not going to get rid of the man cave and make it a communication room. And what you're going to have is you're going to have exactly what I'm saying in the book. You're going to have a seamless paper in the background. You're going to have a real HD camera. You're going to have not a head mic, but you're going to actually have what I call the snowball blue mic. It's actually from a company called Blue, and it looks like a snowball.
Yep.
I know people who may not know about Flash Gordon. It's an old characteristic comic, but the Blue mic with the stand for like $69 on Amazon is one of the best mics ever, and it looks like an old type of RCA radio mic in the olden days when they used to do radio. That is the kind of mic that you should be looking at. No one really likes to see people with earbuds and things hanging out of their ears, and no one likes having things over their head with sort of like a pilot little microphone in there, hold up to their mouth. So you really want to be thinking about building these studios.
So what's the name of that microphone again?
Sure, it's by a company called Blue. And it's called the Snowball mic because it looks like a snowball. Right. And you should get the stand, and the stand looks like an old RCA radio type of mic in the olden days before TV. And it's basically it's supported by rubber bands or bands to keep the vibration really low. And then you have a filtering system for your voice so you don't hear the popping sound. And that's really almost like setting it up like a DJ in a radio show.
I should tell our listeners that we're going to be coming out with 2 episodes in the future about podcasting, and this is one of the microphones that we recommend when podcasting. Yeah,
you must have read used by a whole lot of them.
You must have read my book. No, I've done a lot of research on it, and the cool part is there's a special switch for the Snowball Blue mic, which is actually for interviews. And when you get the stand too, I think when I bought mine, I think it was like $69 on Amazon. Get the mic, get the stand, get the popper filter. It looks really cool on your desk, and you have great sound.
So how would you were one of the C-levels, how would you talk to kind of, if you're a business owner or an upper management person who's hiring people, how do you go about kind of establishing the rapport in an interview situation, or even a kind of like a yearly review or quarterly review? How do you go about doing that and having a good interaction that way?
Yeah, great question. It's the same thing that I tell all the candidates looking for work. The issue is people have to do the preparation. So the hiring manager or the executive who's actually conducting reviews, they need to get good lighting. They need to go out and buy the lighting. You can't just use fluorescent lighting on top of your, on the ceiling. You could get I think it's relatively cheap. You could get the stands and the cameras and the umbrellas for like $29, I think, on Amazon. And what you need is to have backlighting, front lighting, and side lighting. And then what you also need, if you have the seamless paper in the background, that really gets people's attention. You also, before you actually start anything, is go to the men's room or ladies' room and clean up your face. Make sure there's no grease or anything. If you need makeup, use makeup, right? Because these lights will actually show, where you may have some reflections. Now I have a bald head, so if I have a light on top of my head, it looks like I have, big star on my bald head here because of the lighting. So you really want to take extra precautions on how you look. You also want to make sure what you're wearing is in contrast or isn't going to really be a distraction, right? So if you're wearing a red tie and a white shirt, that sometimes doesn't look as well as you think over a digital channel. So you want to be real careful about how you're looking and how the lighting is, how your faces are, how they're looking, if your hair is clean. So you really want to look into professional grooming before you actually do your executive level types of reviews. You also we talked about the mic, make sure people could hear you. Make sure you have an HD camera. Make sure you have the right lighting. Make sure you don't have a lot of jewelry on, especially if you have this lighting. So if you really have a lot of jewelry, it could be a distraction. And focus. The position of the camera is critical. The camera should be eye level, which makes it a little difficult for some people because if you're using the camera on your laptop, we recommend getting the stand for an HD camera and putting it right at eye level. You don't want to be looking down at your staff member or colleague. That's making you look like dominant, and you also don't want to look up, right? That makes you look subservient, and plus they could see in your nose. That's just inappropriate. So you want your camera to be eye level so that it's really just evened out and you're trying to go through your end-of-year reviews. You also don't want any distractions, no wives, no husbands, no kids, no dogs, no cats, nothing. I put up a sign and turn on the little switch saying on air, so no one comes into my office, no one's making any sounds, so nothing. It's a poor excuse that people are working from home and you have all this noise. It's just a complete distraction. And if you're talking about someone's end-of-year review, you do not want to have a distraction. This is what the person's been waiting for all year. How am I doing? Do I get a raise? Do I get a bonus? So you really want to make it all about that person. And by the way, make sure when you have your camera on, before you actually do anything, clean the lens. When's the last time people cleaned their lenses? And going back to CNN, there was a virus expert, and it was absolute utter chaos because the person didn't clean their screen, and it was right where their face was. They need to go out and clean the screen, right? So once again, it's the mindset of being a Hollywood star, not a diva, but a Hollywood star, thinking about it's showtime. Right lighting, right sound, right camera, and also have the script. You know, don't be constantly looking down. If it's someone's review, put the pages up on the wall behind the camera, right? Just like a teleprompt. Control the background, control the environment, make sure you don't have any shadows on your face, clean up your face, make sure your nails are clean. So it's almost as if you're on the show. I would actually think most people should be looking at like 60 minutes in the first few seconds as they're actually just there, sitting there, talking to you, most of the time with a black background and an image or a logo of what the story's about. It's all about that person and the triangle of love, looking straight at that person's eyes and connecting on a human level.
This is reminding me of whenever I talk to, I'm friends with the guy who, he's kind of like a job coach and like a resume coach, and his thing was he actually got a job in construction one time. He didn't know anything about construction, but he showed up for a management job. You know, you had all these people wearing like their construction jeans and shirts and hard hats, and he showed up in a suit. And everybody laughed at him, but he's the one who got the job, even though he knew nothing about it. And it's one of those things, if you do what you're talking about, even if you're job hunting or doing your review, whatever, it'll set you apart. And it'll make people think, to be like, that Adam guy, he knew about the same as the other people, but man, he looked really good and he came across as so confident, and it'll just kind of put you in a new tier, even if you maybe don't belong in that tier in some ways.
I can't agree with you more, because the research shows it's 80 to 85%, sometimes more, depending on what region or what nation you're calling from, is that the visual attribute is critical in that digital communication, be it a meeting, be it a board meeting, be it an interview. How you look matters in that preparation. Because to your point, everyone doesn't do anything. And just by doing that little bit of standing out, oh my goodness, fantastic. The person actually dressed up for an interview, as opposed to wearing jeans and T-shirts and everything else, because they just wake up, flip over their laptops, look at the camera, and then they think they're ready to go.
Well, that opens up kind of a question about trends and how things are going to change moving forward, Dr. Bailo. And so the data and the research that you've done, I would consider it to be kind of pre-mass digitization. Like you said, already people have kind of gone digital, but now it's like all of a sudden the entire world has been forced to go digital. So I just wonder, two questions. Number one, you bring up that the research says this, the data is saying that, the book is data-driven. What exactly are you talking about when you reference the data and the research? Like, what are the metrics? What are you looking at? What are the outcomes? And the follow-up to that is, now that it seems that we're going through a cultural transformation into digital, will that research and data, will it change because people's habits are going to change? So, for example, the idea of wearing a suit to an interview 10 years ago That's what I was taught, that you had to do that. Like, there was no question about it. But 10 years from now, is that still going to be the case because of this cultural change that we're going through?
Mm-hmm. So when I was doing my PhD, the research was all data-driven. So I sat in on digital interviews. I calibrated the interviews. I looked at who got hired and who didn't. I immediately interviewed the hiring manager after that digital interview and saying what worked, what didn't work. I did the research on the mics. I did the research on the cameras. I did the research on the lighting. I read massive amounts of books and took this qualitative data and made it into actionable insights. So everything I'm telling you is based off of what the data is saying. It's not Dr. Paul Bailo saying this is what to do. It's what the data is saying to do. Even such as when you start a conversation, don't wave to the person. It's something called a digital handshake. It's the nod of a head, which is about 10 to 15 degrees with your eyes focused in that camera. That's how you say hello in the digital world. So when you're meeting your boss or your C-level executives or your managers or your VPs, it's not waving like a little child at Disney World. It's looking at the camera with your eyes forward, just 10 degrees, nodding. If you do it right, the other person would actually respond the same way. That's how you're going to say hello in a digital interview or a digital meeting. That's what the data says. When we did the research in terms of eye direction, if you look down, that person will not trust you. The worst thing you could do during your end of year review is look somewhere else. And what I mean by looking down, I don't mean by looking down and being fearful. I mean, don't be distracted and writing and the person just seeing you writing. Your eyes should always be at that camera. That's why we highly recommend don't just attach it to the top of your screen. Get a tripod so that it's actually part of that interaction. When we looked at the research, hiring managers and executives did not like anything between the camera and that person. That's why we always tell people, don't put your keyboard in between the camera and you. Try to keep that barrier clean so there's no distraction. It's like when you're going to dinner with an executive, you don't want to have the candles and the cups and the wine bottles in between you and the potential client. You clear that all away. You want to have an open, easy environment. That's all data-driven. When you're actually having your conversations, lean in. Don't lean all the ways in, but lean in. That body language, based off of data, shows that you're engaged and that you're listening to that person. Do it even though it's not natural, because in the digital arena, that's the human cue for the other party to say, I'm listening to you, I'm interested, I'm concerned, I want to hear what you're saying, and I'm eager and willing to listen to what you're saying. So these are human traits that really are geared based off of the data, not just saying, hey, you should do this. And then when we start talking about culture, if everything ended today, I don't think there'd be any real change. I don't think there's a long enough time that anything would really change in the way it was prior to the virus. It takes 21 days to create a new behavior. If this lasts, which I believe it will, and go beyond 4 weeks, you're going to see significant changes. You're going to see people spending more money and getting better computers. You're seeing people who are now spending more money on better internet connections and higher speed. You're going to see people realizing that man cave served no purpose, but what really serves a purpose is the fact that you actually need a professional work environment. People are tired of seeing kids running in the background and dogs in the background. People are going to be expecting a greater level of professionalism when they have these digital communications. When you talk about dress, you could be right, but a suit and tie has been around over 100 years. It's not so much wearing the suit and tie. It's just the uniform you need to wear in order to show respect to the other party. Now, even if you interview at Google, I have a bunch of friends who had digital interviews and they read the book and they did what I said, they also wore a suit, a crisp, custom-made suit, and they got the job. Other positions, like Adam was talking about, sometimes it works if you're really that special and you have a unique brand to you that you could wear anything you want, but it's probably highly unlikely that it helps your case. I'm not saying some positions you don't necessarily need to wear the tie, but you really want to wear to show the respect to the other party, that you are interested, that you want what they have, you want that job, you want that promotion, you want that raise. It's just a way of showing respect. Now, if you have if it's a normal digital conversation, you still should get dressed up for work. I mean, the biggest problem I see now is that people just rolling up out of bed and going to work. I mean, that's just, you can't have a digital interview in your pajamas. It doesn't work, right? It's just disrespectful. So these are the things that people really have to be concerned about.
So you've mentioned several times, have a studio set up for Skype or Zoom. What technology is out there right now that you really like? Is it Skype or Zoom? Do you have a preference? Kind of what do you recommend using to set up your actual interviews?
It doesn't matter. It's really just all the core pieces. So Skype works really well. Zoom works really well. I expect in the next 6 to 12 months, all the people working from home who are getting sort of annoyed with Zoom and annoyed with Skype, that new people and new products will be advancing because people are realizing there's problems. I find Zoom a little bit more easier than Skype, but there was a time where Skype dominated the market. I mean, look, Skype bought a few thousand copies of my book before it was even launched, actually. So greatly appreciate
awesome.
Skype's. Yeah, before I even started, the chief marketing officer bought, thousands and thousands of copies of the book. And the funniest part was I had a meeting with them. I was talking to them and I said, okay, show me what you give people. They gave me like one piece of paper about how you actually conduct an interview or a conversation on Skype. They had absolutely nothing. The Bible to using Skype and communication was my book, the Essential Digital Interview Handbook.
That works.
Very cool. So, Dr. Paul Bailo, do you have any kind of last tips or tech tools, resources, anything that you want to share with our audience that they need to know?
The first thing is, be yourself at your best. Don't be one of the people who, like we talked about, just thinking you're going to flip open your laptop and start beginning. Record yourself. If you're using Zoom or Skype, record how you look, how you sound, and then think about what you want to do to make it better. And then think about what it is that didn't work for you so that you can improve on it. I'm amazed at how many people are afraid to look into a camera in regards to being recorded. The more you do, the better you become. And practice, 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 practice.
All right. That sounds great. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is fun.
All right, so Dr. Paul Bailo, thanks for joining us on the Work From Home show. He was a former global head of digital strategy and innovation at Infosys. Check out his book. He's the author of the Essential Digital Interview Handbook, Lights, Camera, Interview, Tips for Skype, Google Hangout, GoToMeeting, and more. This book was written, almost 5 years ago, Paul?
It's way ahead of its time.
Way ahead of its time, and I'm sure sales have all of a sudden picked up. So good for you. Are you planning to come out with like a part 2, like an updated version of that book?
Yeah, so we're working with the publisher now in terms of the second version. There's the original book I actually first wrote was actually Essential Phone Interview Handbook, and I was lecturing all over the East and West Coast. And every time I was talking about phone interviewing, everyone was talking about digital interviewing. So it's sort of how this whole career works by getting the job and then getting the phone interview, bleeding into the digital interview. But yes, there will be an updated version within the digital interview handbook, especially because the demand is so high.
So do you have a website people can go to find out more about you?
Yeah, just go into phoneinterviewpro.com. It's www.phoneinterviewpro.com. And there's all information about the phone interview book and the digital interview handbook. And look, I know people are, struggling financially. There's a lot of free tools out there, articles I've wrote, things, look at Paul Bailo. The book's like $5, $10, but look, if you don't have money and you're out of work, don't buy the book. There's a lot of good information out there. I know my publisher is probably going to kill me for saying that, but the right thing to do is the real thing is I've helped over 2.5 million people with their phone interviews and their digital interviews. So people need this. I mean, it's nice to pay the rent, but look, people really need this, and now's the time to help.
Yeah. Absolutely. So that's phoneinterviewpro.com. Dr. Paul Bailo, thanks for joining us on the show. Lots of valuable resources and information. I know I have an entire page full of notes in front of me right now. So really, really beneficial. And phoneinterviewpro.com, that's where our listeners can go to get your book, to find out more information about you, get your free blog posts, free articles. Again, we really, really appreciate you joining us on the show.
Thank you for letting me help. I really appreciate it. It was a great time. Thank you.
And to all the other homies out there, until next time, keep on working from home.